Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining the webinar today. I hope everybody is doing well right now. And my name is Dhruv Singhal, the founder of Open Gears, as well as a junior at Metea Valley High School in Aurora, Illinois. It's great to see that so many of you are interested in listening to the speaker today. And I hope that this event provides you with new insight and new knowledge about careers with animals. Figuring out what I wanted to do in the future was a problem for me personally. So I hope that this event, along with our library of recorded webinars on YouTube, provides you with unique insight about different careers out there. The link to the YouTube channel is on our website, theopengears.com. I would now like to welcome our speaker today, Ms. Lauren Lonski, the Humane Education Manager at the Naperville Area Humane Society, where she holds programs that teach the public how to care for animals and respect all forms of life. She's strongly passionate about working with animals, and she feels extremely rewarded by making a difference for both people and animals. Before we start, I want to remind each and one of you that please do not hesitate to ask questions, whether you decide to write them in the chat or unmute and say them. Once again, thank you so much, Ms. Lauren, for taking time out of your busy schedule to help inspire students to pursue your STEM career. And without further ado, please give Ms. Lauren your undivided attention and a warm virtual round of applause. Thank you so much, Ms. Lauren.
Thank you for having me, Drew. And thank you everyone for attending. I'm excited to share how I started my career with animals and answer any questions, as well as provide what advice I can to students interested in working with animals or just helping animals in general. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, you can feel free to share your screen now.
Perfect. We'll jump into a little PowerPoint that I have set up, just because I think it's nice to have a visual, especially, it's something that you guys are used to in school and will see a lot more of as you progress throughout your career. So generally, I kind of talk about preparing for a career in veterinary medicine, but this definitely does apply to a career with working with any animals in general. A lot of people study similar subjects, whether it be animal science or biology. So definitely that's a good thing to keep in mind as you're starting a career with animals. A lot of people start out from similar places. But a little bit of background on how I got started with my career. I knew that I always wanted to work with animals. I've been a lifelong animal lover. You might hear my cat making some noise in the background as she has fun and plays with some of her toys. Hopefully she'll make it on screen at some point. But yeah, I've always really just connected with animals and believe that helping animals is really important in terms of welfare for both animals and people. If we treat animals well, then we'll treat people well in return. So I knew that I wanted to work with animals in some capacity, but so I started volunteering when I was in high school. I knew that if I wanted to get into animal science at a university or possibly go to vet school someday, that starting early really is highly encouraged. So they want to see lots of different types of experiences. And I think volunteering, is good for service hours and, boosting your resume and college applications in general. But it also, just makes a difference and really helps you build different leadership skills. So I volunteered at several different animal shelters and other organizations devoted to helping animals, like an equestrian center where they help people with special needs with equine therapy. So these people ride horses and you're there to accompany them and help care for the horses. So I just tried to get lots of different types of volunteer experience so I could see what I was interested in the most. I also was participating in several extracurricular activities during high school. So I wanted to stay within a theme of science and animal and environmental related types of extracurriculars. So my high school had a club called Earthworks, where we went around and collected the recycling every Wednesday after school. So we would kind of provide that service to help the custodial staff, but also promote better recycling and more sustainable, reusable types of things overall for the school to use. So it was an environmental based club when I was in my freshman and sophomore year. But then my junior year, one of the teachers mentioned that they wanted to start an animal rights club. So I got together with a couple other students who were also interested in creating an animal rights club. So we put together the petition and information for that. And it was just starting out in my junior and senior year, but it did grow to about 20 members by the time I graduated. And we were able to attend a town hall that they were discussing a deer cull, which if you're unfamiliar, basically it's that they would trap or hunt the deer because they claimed that they were being a pest. However, they weren't looking into other more humane methods to help solve the problem at hand. So we ended up being successful, and the town hall, agreed that they weren't going to go through with the deer cull proposal based on the evidence that the Animal Rights Club had put together. So if there's something you're really passionate about, whether it be animals or something else, STEM related, and kind of like Drew did as well, he knew that this was a service that was needed in the community for students. So always look into different opportunities. If they're not there, you could put them together yourself in a lot of ways. But I also shadowed a veterinarian during my senior year. I wanted to see the hands-on side, and luckily my dog's vet at the time was very kind, and I expressed interest in setting up a time to shadow. So they took time out of their schedule, and we arranged that so I could come in for 2 days and not administer medicines or anything like that, but just work or observe alongside the veterinary technicians and veterinarians who were working, so that I could see what a career in veterinary medicine would be like. And I, once again, really encourage kids in middle school and high school, reach out to different careers that you're interested in and see if people are available to shadow. That's not always the case, but a lot of places, if you just send a simple email or give a phone call, they will try to work that in because they want people to pursue these careers. And it's a great way for students to really see if they could imagine themselves or see themselves doing that career in the future. So those things I definitely would recommend to everybody watching. Get involved in volunteering if you can, extracurriculars and shadowing, because that helps you figure out what interests or what passions you have for a potential career. And then in my bachelor's degree, so once I started college, I knew I wanted to work with animals, so I got a bachelor's in animal science from the University of Illinois, but I also continued volunteering because for veterinary medicine especially, but overall, most careers with animals do require a professional degree of some sort, and vet school is a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine, or a DVM degree. So that's another 4 years in addition to your bachelor's degree. So it's 8 years of college total. And we'll get into what that looks like. And sometimes there's also residencies. So it's definitely a lot of time devoted to studying. But applying to vet school or graduate school, they definitely want to see you keep up with volunteering. And I wanted to continue these different opportunities and experiences. And I was starting to find that I really enjoyed community outreach and the work that different nonprofits were doing. So I tried a couple different internships throughout college and my bachelor's degree. Again, that's kind of the next level up from shadowing. So you are getting some hands-on work. You're not, quite at the level that someone who's being paid. A lot of internships are unpaid. So you're not exactly an employee just yet, but you do get a lot more opportunities to try things out alongside people who are more experienced. So that's another thing that I would definitely recommend students get involved with as they see those opportunities rise up. And then working through college, I kind of figured out for me personally that I really was interested in humane values, human animal interactions, and started to drift away from being as interested in the hard sciences like, chemistry, biology, things like that. I still enjoyed those subjects, but I had much more of a passion for human animal interactions and animal welfare. So that's why instead of going to vet school, which is 4 years, I decided to get a master's degree that was 1.5 years. So I received a master's in animals and public policy from Tufts University. And whether you do vet school or a master's degree or even a PhD, which is even more studying, but usually those are much more focused classes. So my degree really was focused on human animal interactions, as well as research and some public aspects, writing for different press releases, things like that. So there's different careers that people who received the same master's degree that I did go into, whether it be one of my friends helps conserve coral reefs down in Florida. Another is a behaviorist at a shelter. A couple of them have worked for larger animal welfare organizations like the Humane Society of the United States or ASPCA. But that's a master's degree really helps you kind of take that next step in whatever you want to pursue. So like I mentioned, there's more focused classes. We also had to do a research project. So mine involved humane education because I had started to really drive towards working in a humane society or animal shelter that had programs and lots of community outreach, since that's what I enjoyed and found a passion for during my bachelor's degree. And I also did an externship at the MSPCA in Massachusetts. So I kind of was right underneath their humane education manager before I graduated, and then moved back to Illinois to start my career.
So could you really quickly talk about the difference between an internship and an externship?
Good question. We actually get that a lot. It's a term more exclusively used in the animal industry. So that's what they do at the end of your 4 years of vet school. So you do clinicals for your last year, and then usually you extern. So it's kind of like an internship. You're not paid, but it's to kind of complete your degree or the end of your experience and education. So whereas internship, I think, is more often during, like I did an internship my sophomore, junior, and senior year of college.
Right.
So
And
hopefully
also, no, go
that
ahead.
helps.
Yeah.
Nope, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was saying, like, so you were talking a lot about volunteering, which is an absolutely great way to, indulge yourself in the community and learn more about different skills. So do you have any opportunities at the Naperville Humane Animal Society where students can, shadow veterinarians and assist in the caretaking of animals?
Definitely. We don't have a vet on staff currently, but I do know that there are a few vets in the area that would be open to, shadowing students who are looking into a career with veterinary medicine. But at the Humane Society, we do have volunteering for in-shelter work. So you're helping care for and socialize our dogs and or cats. Our volunteers get trained with how to handle animals and our procedures, just so that it's for the safety of both the people and animals involved. But it really is a great way for students to try things out. And all types of volunteering still count when you're applying to college or vet school. They really look at various types of experiences. So at the Humane Society, if you're interested, you would go to our website. If you're 16 and older, you can volunteer as an adult, but we do have opportunities for ages 13 and up. So there's still more supervised activities where you're under our volunteer manager who's kind of teaching you how to work with the animals, and then you could become an adult volunteer when you're of age. And then I also run lots of educational programs. So if you're not quite 13 or 16 yet, there's still classes that you could take, like our after school club. We have one-day camps, summer camp, a junior internship for ages 12 to 15. So there's lots of ways to still get involved and try things out. So feel free to check our website, naperhumane.org. Or you can reach out to Drew for my information, or if he wants to include it, you know, at the end of the video, feel free to reach out to me directly with any questions. Love to set you up with volunteering.
Yeah, you guys offer a whole plethora of opportunities. And once again, you know, if you guys live near the Naperville Area Humane Society, I highly encourage you to, you know, explore these opportunities, especially if you are interested in pursuing a career with animals.
Definitely. Thank you. I appreciate you mentioning that. Perfect. So yeah, definitely getting early experience through volunteering, extracurricular, shadowing, internships. Those are all good ways to figure out if you can see yourself doing that career in the future. But just a little bit about the difference between veterinary school and medical school, because the degrees are quite similar, but there's a lot of differences at the same time. So both require a bachelor's degree in order to apply. So it's 4 years in your bachelor's degree, whether you want to become a vet or a human doctor. And then another 4 years of either veterinary school or medical school. So 8 years total. And you can really study any major, but there are specific classes that we'll get into in more detail. But there's very specific classes required to just not only graduate with your major, but to apply for vet school. So you need a lot of life sciences classes. That's like biology, growth and reproduction, genetics, microbiology, biochemistry, chemistry, like tons of science classes. There is some math involved as well. I think just level 1 or 2 calculus in most cases, and then 2 semesters of physics. So you could be a theater major, and as long as you take all of those science, math, and physics classes, you could still apply to vet or medical school. But to really make things easier in terms of getting both your bachelor's degree and applying to veterinary school, most people kind of have the same majors, either animal science, zoology, or biology if you're thinking about vet school, or biology, chemistry, microbiology if you're thinking about applying to medical school. And at the University of Illinois, and I think at several other colleges, you can also choose a concentration. So I graduated with a bachelor's degree in animal science and a pre-veterinary concentration. So just indicated that I was interested in veterinary school, but the concentration isn't as important as the major, because the major does require certain classes to graduate. So that's why, you know, animal science, zoology, biology line up with the classes required for entering vet school. And it's a heavy class load. So it's possible, like I said, to study something completely unrelated like music or theater and still get into veterinary or medical school, but you would have to take a lot more classes. And just in general, if you do have a major that's related, you're still taking a pretty heavy course load in order to be able to graduate and apply to vet school by the end of your senior year. There are entrance exams, just like when you apply to college, when you apply to graduate school or veterinary school, there are different entrance exams. So I took the GRE because it's accepted for vet school and any master's degree or graduate school. They also say that the GRE is a little bit easier of a test than the MCAT. The MCAT is specifically for medical type of professional degrees. So either medical school or veterinary schools accept the MCAT, whereas the GRE is a much more general test with different, subjects slightly than the MCAT, which is a little more science-based and in-depth. So a lot of people applying to vet school kind of have an advantage because they can take the GRE, which they're probably a bit more likely to score better on, versus medical school only accepts the MCAT. So my advice, if you are looking at veterinary school, professional school, or just a degree with animals in general, go for the GRE because it covers your bases no matter what. Also, the difference in the number of colleges or universities that have vet schools versus medical schools is huge. So currently there are 32 accredited institutions for veterinary medicine, whereas there's 155 accredited institutions for medical school. So there's a lot more colleges and universities that have medical schools versus only 32, and I think that's in 28 states, something like that. I forget. It has grown a little bit since I was in college. I think the number used to be 28, 29, but there's still a very small number of institutions that provide veterinary medicine, and their class sizes are usually around 150 to 200 students. So it can be very competitive and cutthroat applying to vet school because there's just a very small number of spots available. Also, veterinarians like to hold over doctors. No offense to all our wonderful human doctors out there, but they like to say they have to learn more since they need to know the male and female biology for dozens of species, whereas human doctors only have to worry about one species. But obviously, there's a lot of in-depth studying involved in both veterinary and medical school, but just something to keep in mind that there are some different areas of study in terms of the types of animals that you might work with if you're going to vet school. Also, for licensing, there's slightly different requirements. Veterinarians pass the North American Veterinary Licensing Examination, whereas doctors get their license through the United States Medical Licensing Examination. So, basically they do need to take a very large test at the end of their schooling through either veterinary or medical school in order to get a license to practice. So theoretically, you could go through 4 years of bachelor's, 4 years of medical or vet school, and if you don't pass that license exam, then you would have to retry until you do pass that license exam to start your career and practice.
So you mentioned that in order to be a veterinarian, it's important to know the biology of dozens of species. So are there similarities among those species that make it easier to, learn the biology of like so many animals?
Great question. So I didn't go through vet school. They definitely have classes devoted to, different types of animals. So you could be found by mammals, and there's different families of mammals, like canines are different than felines, are different than hoofed animals. So they do break it down in different ways. But actually, in my bachelor's degree, one of the classes required to go into vet school and to graduate was anatomy and physiology. So the way they taught it for us was through human anatomy, and then they would add certain caveats when they would come up as we study different parts of the body. So they break it down in a reasonable way, and you would take more focused classes towards, your third or fourth year of vet school towards whichever animals you think you're going to practice with. So if you're going to go be a companion animal veterinarian with dogs and cats, they're not going to have you spend too many classes on farm animals or equine type of thing. But I'm pretty sure first years and second years take similar classes to get that foundation of general animal anatomy and physiology.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. So yeah, there's definitely a lot involved, and in a lot of ways there's a straight path to vet school, but it's by no means the only path. So what I mean by this is kind of the straight path is there's very few gaps in between when you're studying and when you would start work. So most people applying to vet school will start with different experiences in high school, maybe working, at a pet store or a veterinary office, as well as volunteering and shadowing. And then same, continue their internships and volunteer experience during their bachelor's degree. The bachelor's degree takes 4 years to complete before they move on to vet school, which is another 4 years. Then you would take your boards. That's an 8-hour exam. A lot of places do require a residency, especially there are some different focuses. As you get later on into veterinary school, just like there's cardiologists and ophthalmologists and different types of doctors. Same for, veterinary medicine. There's different areas of the body that a vet might specialize in. So those often require residencies, but even, emergency or some different veterinary practices might have you do a year or two of residency, meaning I think residents do get paid somewhat, but it's definitely not full salary like when you're ready to go into practice. And then you practice and are a vet until you retire. But like I said, there's a number of ways that you could end up becoming a veterinarian. So some people actually end up getting an associate's degree or become a vet tech, which is like a nurse for animals. So veterinary technicians actually do a lot more of the husbandry and hands-on care with the animals, whereas veterinarians are really trying to diagnose and run tests to be able to figure out how to treat these animals. And an associate's degree is what's required to become a veterinary technician. Or there's other different careers that you could do with an associate's degree, like training dogs. So sometimes people will have a career that's related to veterinary medicine, especially with animals, and then finish their bachelor's degree later on. So once you get that bachelor's degree and complete those specific classes, then you can apply to veterinary school. But college and vet school are expensive, so some people might work in between that time, again, often in an animal-related field, but it doesn't have to be. As long as you meet the requirements for the veterinary school application, that's what they really care about. In addition to experience. So a lot of people are either working with animals or volunteering with animals during this time, and there's no set path by any means. But after you get into vet school, spend 4 years of studying hard, learning all about animals and their bodies. Then you would take your boards, same thing, which would lead into the residency and then eventually practice. So like I mentioned, that you could go towards a really straight path where there's very few gaps between when you're in school and when you start working, or for some people, they end up doing different things that do lead them to go into veterinary medicine in the future. So it's really up to you to follow what you enjoy the most and are able to figure out within your career.
So we got a question in the chat. So this attendee wants to know whether you can get your veterinary doctorate degree first and then decide which specific focus you want to get into. Is that possible?
Good question. I think if you took the same classes in undergrad, in your bachelor's degree, like if you were a biology major, you could apply to both med school and vet school. Yes, definitely. However, once you get into vet school or med school, I'm pretty sure that's set. You couldn't, you would have to drop out of med school in order to go to veterinary school or vice versa. But, if you're thinking about a career in either human or animal medicine, then you could definitely study one of those majors that's kind of in between, like biology or even chemistry. You do take a lot of chemistry as a pre-vet student. So you would meet all of the class requirements to apply for both medical and veterinary school. So hopefully that helps answer your question, but I don't think it would be as easy of a switch once you're in medical or veterinary school or after those 4 years.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. And I'm pretty sure I did hear of people who, like I said, switched from applying to vet school to med school. That definitely happens. So a little bit on where you guys are at and really where to start. So in order to become a veterinarian, like I said, there's very specific things that you need to have in order to apply to, your undergraduate degree and then vet school. So you definitely need to graduate high school, get a high school diploma to attend a college in general. And really good grades are very important, especially for applying to vet school. Colleges, you want good grades, but vet school, you want amazing grades. On average, usually above a 3.6 GPA is what most applicants applying to vet school who get in have, maybe even above a 3.7. So once again, it can be very cutthroat. So don't beat yourself up if you're not there in high school. Overall, you just want to try to develop your study habits and do the best that you can so that when you get to your bachelor's degree and start college, that you have good study habits and can keep up those grades, hopefully to the point where you're in line with what vet school or whatever graduate school you want to get into is looking for. So once you're in college, take all the necessary classes to apply to vet school or at least to graduate. And really you want that bachelor's degree. Definitely you need it to apply to vet school, but for most animal related careers in general, like I have, like I said, a bachelor's and master's degree. My sister works at the Indianapolis Zoo. She started out as a marine mammal trainer and needed a bachelor's degree. I want to say she started about 20 years ago. So she's been in the business a while, and even back then needed a bachelor's degree. So most animal-related disciplines are going to need at least an associate's, but most, even more so, would want that bachelor's degree, likely in animal science, zoology, or related field. For vet school, make sure you complete those specific classes. So I want to say at least 5 semesters of chemistry, including organic chemistry, biochemistry, microbiology, all the other life sciences classes, some math, physics. So once you have those specific requirements, and there is an application that asks about, your resume and your volunteer experience. You also have to send your scores from the GRE or the MCAT. So there's a little bit involved. But then once you get into vet school, you would focus on completing your DVM or your Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree. Towards the end of vet school, you'll go into clinicals. So that's kind of a classroom where it's really like a hospital, and you're learning how to do the hands-on day-to-day aspect of veterinary medicine. And then after clinicals, like we kind of talked about, you would go into that externship. So that's usually the last semester where you're technically working. You might not have full range yet, but you are working alongside people who are more experienced. You're able to do hands-on things, probably given some responsibilities in order to be able to graduate as well. Like I had to complete a project for my externship, in order to graduate. So I'm pretty sure there's similar requirements, but it's mostly so you can have a smooth transition into the working world. And then again, you want to get those board exams done at the end. So that's required in order to practice. So you have to pass. I want to say it's like a 75 or 80% passing rate. So it's not that you have to get 100% or you can never practice veterinary medicine, and retakes are allowed, but you have to wait a little bit before you can retake them. And you must take your first NAVLE board but no longer than 10 months after you graduate vet school. So if you graduated, let's say, this coming year in 2022, you couldn't take the NAVLE board exam for 2023. You need to take it, right after you graduate pretty much. Otherwise, I think there's some other paperwork or requirements for you to fulfill to be eligible again. Then, like we mentioned before, lots of different private practices and animal hospitals might require a residency or some other internship or externship, some type of final experience, or like a trial period before they hire you full time. So that's kind of just to be expected, that you might not get into a practice right away, but you will kind of have the opportunity to at least get paid and start your working career, and kind of, have another veterinarian who's more experienced show you the ropes a little bit more. And also, like I mentioned, the veterinary specialties would often require even further schooling, residencies, or internships that really focus on that specialty, whether it be, like I mentioned, ophthalmology, kinesiology. There's tons of different specialties, which is really cool that you can specialize in something that would help benefit animals with that specific medical issue, and they really need to see a specialist. It's not something an everyday veterinarian could provide. But after all of that hard work, then you would finally be a fully licensed practicing veterinarian. So there are a lot of steps, but remember, this is usually over at least 8 to 12 years. Usually I would say most residencies are under 2 years. So from the time that you get into college when you're 18 till 26 when you would graduate veterinary school, to maybe 28 or 30 for you to complete those residencies. But that is a long period of time. So you have lots of time to boost your resume and get involved with different volunteer or internship experiences. And colleges are great at lining up all the different things that you need to do to apply. So there's lots of support throughout this time. I don't want to overwhelm anyone and think that they all have to worry about this overnight.
Right. But I think it's great. I think it's great that you're clearing up this misconception that, like, because I always used to think that pursuing a career as a veterinarian would be a lot easier than just being a doctor. But now, like, through your presentation, I actually realized that it is almost like the same amount of work, the same amount of schooling, the same amount of like education required. And
pretty much, and there is a lot of crossover. It's not something I thought to include in the presentation, but it is something that's brought up in both medical school and vet school, that there's things we've learned about through veterinary medicine that have really helped us in human medicine, and vice versa. We can't always apply things, between animals and humans, but the more we learn about all species, the better off everybody is how I see it. So that's a great thing to bring up.
Yeah, exactly.
So looking at applying just to vet school. So this is the time period when you're in college. Mostly what you need to do is send your college transcripts. So that includes the specific courses that you took. And that's like the proof to show that you've taken these courses and passed the courses required to apply for vet school. And this is also where they'll look at your college GPA. And like I mentioned, it is pretty cutthroat and a very high GPA expectation. However, there are things you can do to boost your application to vet school, even if you don't quite meet the 3.6 or 3.7 ideal GPA. If you have a really good GRE score or lots of volunteer internship experience, studying abroad, research in a lab, there's lots of ways to get involved and really boost your resume and experience while you're in college. So that can offset a slightly lower GPA. but you definitely want to keep those grades up overall because they are going to thoroughly look through all of the classes that you've taken at college. And you have to send any other previous colleges you've attended. So like I mentioned, for people who might have gotten an associate's degree before they went to a four-year university for a bachelor's, they would have to send any transcripts from any colleges they've attended ever. So you need to be fully transparent with all the classes that you've taken. And then
Right, on top
you
of
would,
that too, that's really
oh,
critical
sure.
for high school. Yeah, so I was just saying that, like what you said about grades is also really important for high school students currently that are applying to college, and not just the field of medicine, but in almost any field. It's like really important to keep your grades high, as that is a big indicator that shows colleges that you're ready to take on the rigor of work that they expect you to be able to take on.
Exactly. Exactly. The earlier you start these habits, not only the better off are you going to be in college because you've built yourself a good foundation, but exactly like Drew just said, that is what colleges are looking for, because it really is a good predictor of who's going to perform well in college. If you have good grades in high school, you'll likely keep up those good grades in college. So you want to focus on your grades and testing as best you can, and don't be afraid to reach out for support. I know, Naperville and Aurora schools are great at providing lots of support for their students, whether it be with testing, classes in general, applying to college. So use that support, definitely. And colleges do have, different support as well. So, I went in for like a GRE briefing with some other students. So make sure when you're in college, same thing, that you're keeping up with your grades and doing the best you can, or taking classes to improve test scores. So the better your test taking skills are now or later, that's definitely a way that you could boost your application to vet school or college. But GPA and overall extracurricular and volunteer experiences are important as well. And there's a very specific application for applying to vet school. So what's nice is you would fill out this general VMCAS or the VMCAS application. So that includes your name and your address, your phone number, all that fun stuff. It includes a place for you to upload your college transcripts and your test scores. Also letters of reference. So you need 3 letters of recommendation from a professor, a supervisor, and they usually require at least 1 veterinarian. So whether that's a professor or the supervisor, and then 1 extra professional. So you need 3 letters of recommendation that you would upload to the VMCAS website, and then that gets sent to all of the different vet schools that you want to apply to. Sometimes there's a supplemental like essay portion, but at least for the most part, you're sending all of the necessary things that you need to check off your list to each of the vet schools that you want to apply to. So you could be very ambitious and apply to all 32 in the country, or I think typically most people look at like 5 to 8 at least. I think even nowadays looking at college, that's usually the number of colleges you want to think about applying to, or even more. When I hear from high school students thinking about applying to 10 or more colleges, I salute you guys. It's a lot of work, but it is good to send out that application to as many different places as possible. So the VMCAS is kind of like the Common App for vet schools, if you're familiar with the Common App. And then after you complete the VMCAS, which includes, like I mentioned, the transcript, the test scores, the letters of recommendation, you also have a place to put your resume and other hands-on experience, and you want to really keep track of all the different things you're doing in high school and college, so that you can add this to an application for vet school, grad school, or keep up your resume for if you go directly into a career after college. Also, you guys know, since you're in school, and especially if you're going to be applying to college soon, get it in before the deadline. Start early. Make sure you look into any extra requirements. Like I said, there's often supplemental essays for the schools. You do the bulk in the online application, but you might have to send, an email or a fax or a letter to the specific vet school that you're interested in by their specific deadline. So you really need to investigate each individual school you're applying to and make sure that you have things organized so that you can turn things in before the deadline. And then once you're done with all that work, definitely take a deep breath, because it's a lot, and really the rest is up to luck. It's a long road, and you do need to be on top of your grades and your resume, whether it's vet school or medical school, and lots of different careers in general, and applying to college. But you still should reward yourself at the end of the day, because as long as you're doing your best and pursuing what you're interested in, that's what matters. You'll find a way to get there, like we talked about earlier, one way or another.
Yeah, and I do want to mention for our high school, middle school students that are tuning into this webinar that, these are great things to keep in mind as you work your way up through life, and, you go through college and then you later go on to pursue vet school. Like, what Miss Lauren said about, gaining experience and research opportunities at high school, getting those letter of recs, and developing those great relationships with professors, supervisors, and other professionals. Those are things that you want to keep in mind, even as a high school student right now, because those will be fruitful
Exa-
as you go on and take advantage of opportunities around you.
Exactly. That support is there, and that's the way that you build those connections, definitely. So as far as the exact specific classes required for vet school, and this is kind of what you want to be studying in high school as well. I know for high school, there's not always a lot of wiggle room, because you need to take, I think it's 4 years of English, and 4 years of math, or 3 years of science, all those types of things. But if there are electives in any of these types of classes or fields, anything that you find particularly interesting, definitely try to take electives in high school. They could be some of the most fun classes. And again, it's a way for you to figure out more about your passions and what you can picture yourself doing in the future. So you definitely, for vet school, have to take biology, zoology, both organic and inorganic chemistry. And we note the difference because they are very different. I did very well in inorganic chemistry. That's probably, if you guys are in high school, what most of you are learning. And it's what you start learning early on in your undergraduate degree. But then to apply to vet school, you need to pass organic chemistry, which is a little bit more advanced, as well as the way that it's taught, and the topics are just a much more different type of way of thinking, I guess. So some people do very well in both. Some people only do well in one or the other. But vet school does require that you pass and have those both on your transcript. And then you also need biochemistry. So that's another more specific class, 2 semesters of physics, 1 semester of calculus. That can be 2 semesters depending on the vet school you're applying to, but I think most only require 1 semester. Statistics, so there is some additional math as well, but usually it's not too involved. You just need those 1 or 2 semesters. It's again microbiology, anatomy, and physiology. So that was taught through my major. It was animal science, anatomy, and physiology. I think it was ANSI 222, something like that. So there's a very set classes for animal science students so that they knock out a lot of these life science classes. So same thing, there was an animal science nutrition class and animal science genetics class. I think for medical majors like microbiology and biology, they have a similar thing where you would take those specific life science classes within your major. And then there's other classes like the chemistry that I had to take outside of my major, and animal reproduction. And then there's still other classes that aren't related to life sciences that are required by vet school. And most are required to graduate with a college degree in general. So you need some human composition, humanities, public speaking, and then what can come in handy is like environmental science. So I took a few natural resources classes because I figured they would be helpful for a career related to animals and animal welfare. Other science electives. Some vet schools required laboratory hours, so a lot of science classes like chemistry and certain like anatomy and physiology had labs attached to them, but depending on the college, that can look a little different. So you just want to make sure when you're taking your science classes that it comes along with the right number of lab class hours as well. Then other helpful electives that if you're interested in going to medical or veterinary school, medical terminology or Latin or etymology come in major handy because lots of medical terms are Latin based. So if you can memorize different prefixes, suffixes, root words, that really helps you learn all the different medicines and diseases since they're pretty much all Latin based. So that's highly recommended, as well as business can also be helpful depending on if you want to own your own practice someday, or business classes could come in handy in the nonprofit industry, just so you're promoting and learning management, things like that.
So what was the class that you enjoyed the most?
I would say human-animal interactions. What was the other one called? I'm trying to remember. Animals in society. So for me, that's where I learned that I did enjoy anatomy and physiology, genetics, reproduction, but it's a lot more math based type of science, whereas human-animal interactions and animals in society are a little bit more humanities based. So the connection between human animals and the human animal bond, how people treat animals and ways that we can improve the lives of animals and humans in return. So I found I just was much more excited about those classes. I loved going to them. I loved doing the homework for them. So I figured I don't need to study 4 years of hard science if I'm not really excited about it, compared to, going into a degree and a career that I was really excited about. And not to say I would probably be happy as a veterinarian, but I just realized that it wasn't necessary for me to become a veterinarian. I more just wanted a career with animals in general and how to make a difference for them, versus, the medical aspect was fun, but not necessary for me. And really, as you get deeper into applying to vet school, you really have to have a large drive towards the medical and scientific aspect, and even research, can be helpful too. That's what vet school is looking for a lot of the time. But there's still lots of classes that are fun, no matter if you're going to be going into vet school or another animal related field. I also loved handling farm animals, believe it or not. Growing up in the Chicago suburbs, we don't get too much interaction with farm animals, but like the class was mostly going and working with pigs, cows, chickens. It was fantastic. I TA'd for it the following semester. So sometimes you find classes you wouldn't expect are some of your favorites.
Yeah, it's all about exploring and just getting out of your comfort zone.
Exactly, exactly. So, what's required to get into most college or universities, especially when I was looking at applying to college and I knew that I wanted to go into vet school or an animal related field. I wanted to apply to colleges that had a vet school attached to them. So that really helped me narrow down the number of schools that I was looking at applying to. You know, there's only 32 universities with vet schools attached to them. I ended up, I think, applying to 4 or 5 total. I looked seriously at about 8. Um, but I did think that it would be helpful to attend my 4-year bachelor's degree at the same place, or potentially a place where I could then get my 4-year veterinary medical degree after, since that's what I was originally looking at in high school. But I think just if you want to work with animals in general, because they have veterinarians at the vet schools close by, they often teach classes for undergraduates getting their bachelor's degree. There's a lot of animal related clubs, opportunities. The internship I did was at the vet school, you know, on campus or next door to the undergraduate campus. So I would definitely recommend going to a college with a vet school attached if possible. But there's plenty of people who go to other schools. Actually, not far from us, Aurora University has, I want to say, is it a human animal studies major? So, but it's basically an animal science related major where people learn about helping animals, kind of related to community outreach or working in nonprofits. And that would be a great major for potentially applying to vet school. So it doesn't have to be a vet school university, but that's helpful, or at least research which colleges have animal specific programs. But to apply to any college, you definitely have certain requirements. Like I mentioned, there's 4 years of English, 4 years of math, 3 to 4 years of science. And if you're looking to go to vet school or medical school, definitely try to take a science elective or 4 years of science if possible. I took AP Bio my senior year, and I actually took a science elective, marine biology, which was a really fun class. 2 years of social studies, although again, applying to college in general, the more you can take and boost your class transcript, the better. Foreign language, most colleges want you to take at least 2 years of foreign language in high school. However, 4 is highly recommended, not just because it'll boost your college application, but you might qualify to knock those classes off in, your undergraduate degree, which in some ways I wish that I, did take more foreign language in college, because the more you keep it up, the better you'll be able to use it in the future. However, there's just so many other classes I wanted to take for animal science and vet school that if I had to worry about, taking a foreign language to graduate college, it would have been much more difficult. So I'm
Did you
glad I
take
took 4 years of foreign
right?
language in high school and then didn't have to worry about it in college.
Did you
And
take
then,
4 years of
oh,
language in
sorry,
high
go ahead.
school? Did you take 4 years of foreign language in high school?
I did. I don't know if that's something you guys commonly do at
Yeah,
Niqua.
we do. Like, I mean, there's a lot of people, who took 4 years of foreign language, but there's always like that kind of debate as to whether you should like, go pursue like those elective science classes at the expense of not taking a foreign language. There's like always that kind of debate that happens among like high school students, like especially me, since I've had that debate before.
That it is a really tricky call. And it probably depends on the specific college or area you're looking to study. Like if it's between taking an extra science or a foreign language and you're looking to go into a science related field, I could see, taking the science class a little bit more than the foreign language. But if you know that you wouldn't have to take foreign language whatsoever in college, if you were to take that extra class, that could impact your decision. Or, does the college require 5 years or 6 years of foreign language? Then, it's probably worth taking the science class. So I wish I could, give a little bit more specific, but definitely talk to your advisors and teachers and see what they think is helpful, because sometimes they have a little more insight as to, what might benefit you in the long term overall, because they want you to learn what you're passionate about as well.
Exactly. Yep.
And again, if there's other electives that you're able to take, I would recommend that. Like a lot of colleges do require visual and performing arts, but it can always boost your college application and overall experience. So I would recommend taking as many electives, whether they're art, writing, music related. That's okay. Colleges still like to see that you have other interests and hobbies, as long as you're taking all of those other more, required or core classes. If you have those out of the way, then you can really look at electives. And then GPA, keeping a high GPA, or at least just, good grades in general, is really important for getting into college. That's probably the first thing they look at, not the only thing. Like we talked about earlier, your experience and extracurriculars, your test scores. There's lots of other ways that you can still make yourself stand out, your entrance essays, but just having good grades is always a perfect backbone and gives you confidence too when you're applying to different colleges. So obviously you guys know, or most of you probably know, how GPA works. 4.0 is straight A's, 2.0 is passing. I have the little chart on the side there. So ideally everyone would be 4.0. It's not that easy, but just as long as you're doing your best, focusing on grades, as well as, taking the right classes and trying to get involved in other volunteering and extracurriculars when possible. And research what the average GPA is at your college, because that can help you kind of know what to be a goal, or at least, give you an idea of the likelihood of getting into that college. So I know there's like different databases out there that either high schools offer, or some are free, but definitely research all the specific schools you're thinking about applying to. So look at their acceptance rate, campus size, average GPA, average test scores. All those things are really important. And I'm sure most of you in high school have heard, visit campus too, see what actual life is like, because things can look one way on paper, and then you might get a totally different feeling when you're there. So really getting that experience in person is important, as well as doing the research on what things look like with their acceptance and scores, averages ahead of time.
So in your instance, why did you choose to study at the University of Illinois?
Why did I choose? Good question. There's a lot of factors, but most simply put, I definitely knew I wanted a very large school. That's something I had always envisioned. Like I mentioned, I had narrowed down my choices to places that only had affiliated veterinary schools. So my top choice was the University of Illinois. Michigan State University was second. Iowa State University. I also looked at Ohio State University and kind of Wisconsin-Madison, but they basically had the same grades required as U of I. So in-state tuition was a big part of my decision as well, the cost of college. definitely factors into the decision. So I was very happy to go to in-state, but I still was, far enough away where I felt like I was getting, that home away from home experience and large school. There were some familiar faces from high schools or areas near me, but I still met lots and lots of people, got lots of different types of experiences and took classes that, I really was interested in and enjoyed. So I definitely felt that I made the right decision based on, what I was looking for. But I did everything that, we kind of talked about. I had created a spreadsheet of the different colleges that had, veterinary schools and what it would be like to go there. Like the University of California, Davis sounds awesome, but I knew I wasn't going to be able to afford it or, move out there right away. But I did end up going to the East Coast for graduate school. So sometimes things work out in ways you don't expect, but doing that research and going in person really, really helps you. I knew when I walked onto U of I that I felt, really good about it. I liked Michigan State as well. And I won't say anything bad about OSU, but I got the vibe that they were much more looking for people who want to focus on farm animals, and I enjoyed time with farm animals, but that wasn't what I was looking for in the moment. Their campus was also so huge. So there's just personal preference that you won't find out until you actually go yourself, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
So try things out and do that research and try to arrange visits to any of the colleges you're interested in. Some other things that are required for college, because anyone going through it in high school right now definitely knows there's just a lot involved in applying for college. So looking at undergraduate universities, most definitely want to see good scores for the ACT or the SAT. And their average score will vary depending on the college or university. And the tests themselves are scored somewhat differently. So this is where taking a test prep course can be really helpful. Not everyone is a fantastic test taker, but even if you are good at taking tests, there's probably things you could learn to take tests better. And, I was lucky enough to take a prep course, and there's things that I still remember that I learned from the prep course. So if possible, try to take that, or at least buy, there's books on, Amazon or from Barnes and Noble where you can take ACT practice tests, and they have different recommendations for test techniques. So look into purchasing some of those and practicing the ACT or SAT ahead of time. That's definitely the best way to enhance your score, no matter where you're starting from. And then again, extracurricular experience, and all different extracurriculars count for applying to college. So that's sports, clubs, part-time jobs, volunteering, non-academic activities, pretty much anything where you're devoting your time and trying new things, shadowing, as long as you're kind of keeping track. So yeah, you can still create an initial resume even if you've never had a paid job before. And that'll be impressive to different places that you might apply to, whether it be college or your part-time job. At least just, outlining, I've volunteered for my church or the Humane Society, or, I'm president of the student council, whatever it might be. Laying those things out and at least showing effort that you're interested in gaining more experience can really, really make a difference. And if you're interested in veterinary school, then definitely try to focus on animal or environmental related activities. But again, anything counts, and figure out what you enjoy. That's the most important thing, is to try lots of different things that you're interested in to find what thing you want to focus on in the future. Also, like Drew kind of mentioned, building good connections with your teachers, because they have, lots of advice for potential careers or going into college in general. And most colleges require letters of recommendation from at least 1 or 2 teachers. Some might even require 3. So it's important to understand how many letters you might need for whichever colleges you're applying to, and to build those relationships ahead of time. Also, be sure to ask your teachers well in advance before you need the letter due by. You don't want to ask them 1 week before to write you a letter of recommendation, because not only do they have the right to say no for whatever reason, but you really want them to be able to spend the right amount of time on your letter of recommendation and give you the best recommendation possible. So try to give them at least a month's advance if possible. And usually you guys will be well aware if the colleges you're applying to are part of, early decision or any of that. You'll know the exact deadlines well in advance. So just kind of have some ideas in mind for which teachers you would want to ask letters of recommendation, and then kind of have a calendar laid out when you want to ask them and when it's due by. Again, experience really makes all the difference and is one of the biggest things that colleges and especially veterinary school are going to look at, and different types of experiences. So it's a good thing to do volunteering, extracurriculars before entering college or undergraduate, and then start to focus and narrow in on certain types of experiences as you go through your bachelor's degree. And this again can help boost your application and put more spotlight on your strengths if you don't have an ideal GPA or test score. And the earlier you start getting involved, the better. So you can start volunteering, like we mentioned, at the Humane Society, or even if you're not old enough to volunteer at a Humane Society or get a part-time job, there's other classes, through the Humane Society. I'm sure if you're interested in other careers, there's things through like the Park District or libraries. There's definitely opportunities out there for you to learn and get that hands-on trial to see if you enjoy it or not. Shadowing your local vet. So for veterinary school, I highly recommend that people do that. It's a great way to just get that initial experience. And it is something that you can talk about when applying to college or vet school. So again, just try to ask nicely, whether it's through email or a phone call, see if they would be able to spare some time. And for shadowing any type of career, as well as letters of recommendation, I should have mentioned this, make sure you send them a thank you afterwards, because these people are like mentors and are helping you get started with your career and figuring out your career path. So you definitely want to keep up that connection and show them how much you appreciate the ways that they're helping. Again, all experience counts. So just do whatever your heart is interested in, whether it's extracurriculars, clubs, volunteering, part-time jobs, studying abroad in college, internships, research. So there's an endless list of possibilities. So really just try to get different exposure and find out whatever you're interested in, and reach out and get started. There's nothing stopping you, or there shouldn't be anything stopping you. And
Awesome. Thank you so much, Miss Lauren, for the awesome presentation about these different careers with animals. And we will now start the Q&A. So like again, if you have any questions that you want to write down and share them with us, that would be great. And you don't have to share your screen anymore, Miss Lauren.
Oh, thank you for the reminder.
Yeah. Someone just wanted to know about what kinds of skills, both soft and technical, should people working with animals know?
That's definitely a good question. I would say as far as like hard or technical skills, those things are mostly learned either during your schooling in undergraduate or through volunteer opportunities, getting that, early experience. So animal husbandry or caring for animals, and animal handling and body language are some of the most desired or required hard skills that are pretty exclusive to the animal industry. So whether that's vet school or working at an animal shelter, dog training, you do need to have a thorough understanding of how animals communicate and how to safely handle them. So there's very specific procedures, to be safe in any circumstance. Usually, things are fine, but we're trained for, if things go unexpectedly, how to stay safe for both us and the animals. So that's very, very important as far as hard skills. Like I said, that's definitely a lot of hands-on training, and schooling helps prepare you for that as well. And then soft
Right.
skills, I would say leadership and teamwork kind of hand in hand. And I know that might sound kind of odd, but there are times where you need to work independently and be able to take charge. You need to be confident in a number of different situations, whether that's handling an animal or explaining to a client and a doctor, explaining to people what they need to do to help this animal. So you need to have good leadership skills in those types of situations. But there's also plenty of daily things that we do in animal shelters or veterinary offices that require lots of teamwork. So whether it be surgeries for veterinarians or behavior evaluations, animal intake, adoptions, there's lots of things that require collaboration and cooperation, communication. So lots of teamwork, being able to jump in whenever's needed. Sometimes people think going into a career with the animals, I won't have to talk with people. I don't like people. I only like animals. You're going to need to be able to work with people as well. So, like I said, I would say both leadership and teamwork, and being able to switch between the two pretty easily.
Yeah, and those qualities are really important, and not just the field of medicine, but in like any field you go into. And then, just
Exactly.
finally, I always like to end our webinars with this one question. I know you've alluded to this a lot throughout your presentation, but what should students who are interested in pursuing careers with animals do right now to acquaint themselves with the field of veterinary medicine and animal studies?
Yeah, great question. So I would definitely study science and focus on keeping up your grades so that you can apply to college. But definitely, like we've been talking about, get that hands-on experience through volunteering, extracurriculars, a part-time job. There's lots of different ways, shadowing, building connections, whether it's through LinkedIn or by asking your teachers if they know someone, calling up your veterinarian, calling your local animal shelter to see if you can get started volunteering there. The more connections you build and experiences you take part in, the more you have to draw on, not just for a college application or an application to veterinary school, but for your career and experience in general. So I just really enjoyed a lot of the things that I did. It wasn't just to apply for further my career, but I really did have a good time doing those things as well. So that's my big recommendation, whether you're looking at vet school, medical school, or any type of career. Getting that hands-on experience and finding what you enjoy is the most important.
Brilliant. Awesome. Yeah, it's about, being passionate about what you're doing. If you aren't passionate about what you're doing, then you won't have fun on the job, and you're just going to be wasting your time. But again, that's why getting those experiences, like you said, going volunteering, gaining like an internship experience and shadowing of a doctor are critical for you to understand whether the field of veterinary medicine is right for you. And if it isn't, well, at least you figured out right before, like college kicks in and all those like big commitments come flying in. But
Exactly.
yes,
And things might change as you go throughout your studies, but you figure that out not just through classes, but those experiences as well. So definitely.
awesome. Well, again, thank you so much, Miss Lauren, for the awesome presentation. It was really informative, and I personally learned a lot too about how one can pursue the field of veterinary medicine and how, one can become a veterinarian. It's a really like diverse field. Initially, I always used to think that, the only field you could work in with animals is just becoming a doctor, veterinarian. But, you showed us that, you can also work in the animal welfare sector too, passing different legislation or like working for, animal rights organizations and advocating for the correct treatment for animals. And those are some really awesome points. And again, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to, help us learn more about these different options that we can pursue. And if you guys can please give Miss Lauren a virtual round of applause once again, that would be appreciated.